bit early tonight.
Okay. And we are not having that executive session, so.
I saw that. I saw the canceled link.
Yeah.
Hey, Angie. Hi, Gary.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Missing Sean. Just Sean?
Steve, Sean.
Oh, there's Steve. No, Steve's on.
Oh, okay.
That's Steve. Hi, Steve.
To answer everybody's question, there was a tree that came down and blocked Main Street by the post office. That's what knocked out the transformer.
Mm.
Gotcha.
I heard someone cutting. I wasn't sure what that was about. Now I know.
Trying to make a new piece of art for the mill.
Quick answer there, Chief Pizziso.
Just happened and my sergeant just gave the daily pass down. So
That's good.
Mayor, I think we've got everybody but Sean.
Okay. Anybody know Sean's status?
I'm checking on him now. But to answer the actual question, no.
Okay.
He's probably handing shots out.
Yeah. Hey, well, let's get going with him. Let's get going then 6 o'clock. So with that, this is going to be a Lake Stevens City Council meeting via Zoom. And it is Tuesday, September 28th, 2021 at 6 p.m. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order and ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Sean says his PC. Oh, there he is. He's there. Never mind.
Hey, Sean.
All right.
Hello.
Yeah,
I actually made the pledge. I was there.
excellent, excellent. Well done. All right, so with that, let's City Clerk Chellan, would you give us a roll call, please?
Sure. Councilmember Daughtry.
Here.
Councilmember Peter Shagan.
Present.
Councilmember Frederick.
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Here?
Councilmember Jorstad.
Here.
Councilmember Ewing.
Present.
Councilmember Tagent.
Present.
All right, sounds like we have everybody here. So with that, let's move on to an approval of the agenda, Council President.
All right. Does anybody on the council have any differences they want in the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. It's passed unanimously. There you go, Mr. Mayor. You have an agenda.
All right, thank you very much. So with that, we'll move into citizens' comments, and citizens' comments will tonight. I'll ask for any folks in the attendees to raise their hand. If you wish to provide citizens' comments tonight, it's 3 minutes is what we give you to address the city council on whatever you would like to comment with the council. We'll call you into the panelist area where we'll ask you to state your name and your address, and then your 3 minutes will begin. I set my alarm for 2 minutes and 50 seconds, which when you hear the alarm go off, gives you another 10 seconds. And with that, is there anyone wanting to provide citizens comments? I have Gabe Schmuck. Let's go and bring Gabe into the panelist area. Gabe, go ahead and unmute and state your name and your address and go ahead.
Hi, my name's Gabe Schmuck. I live at 2430 Cedar Road. I just wanted to make I'm glad the police chief is here because I actually wanted to talk to him as well. I know that you guys don't answer questions, but I just want to make sure that he's aware of this particular matter about the sidewalks in the city seem to be a little bit sparse. I've talked about a related issue with the sidewalks up here on Cedar as relating to the excessive and constant speeding. It's 25 miles an hour up here, as are most residential roads, and that doesn't seem to stop most people from driving 40, 45 through here most of the day. So I had a couple of youth, high school age students come upon about a week ago. They were on the advisory council, and they were actually petitioning for signatures to get a sidewalk on this street for that exact reason. Christmas morning last year, one of my neighbors had their fence blown apart from either a speeder or a texting driver. My neighbor across the street has built a fence to protect his kids. There have been multiple animals hit on this road and roads surrounding the area. So I believe that sidewalks are most likely going to have to be a priority in this area. Also related to the sidewalk issue, there was a PUD meter reader that was out here, and he had blocked my driveway for more than about 5 minutes when he was doing some readings on the reader. And that was because there are no shoulders and no sidewalks on this road other than people's man-made sidewalks that they choose to use with their property. So I would really like the council and the police chief to maybe discuss in a further meeting down the road where sidewalks could be placed in areas that are more needing of them. So if that could be a priority in the near future, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Gabe, thank you. Appreciate your comments. Is there anybody else who'd like to provide comments tonight? I've got Jackie Longley. Can we bring Jackie in, please?
While we're bringing her in, could I just request that maybe at our next workshop, we review the sidewalk priority list and see if the area that was just mentioned is one of those priority areas or is in part of the planning?
Can do.
Great, thank you.
Take a look at it. All right, we have Jackie in here. Jackie, if you could state your name and address, and I'll begin your timer.
Okay, Jackie Longley. My address is 2116 131st Avenue Northeast. It's funny that citizen brought up sidewalks because I brought that up last year and it went nowhere. That our road was widened, and which basically got rid of the shoulder for the kids walking to Pioneer Elementary, and now they have nowhere to walk either. Anyways, the real reason I came to speak tonight was about the Lake Stevens Municipal Code. It's 14.76.120. It's the retention and protection of large trees. It seems like code is being interpreted by City Hall, the people who give out permits. It's being interpreted where it shouldn't be. There are glaring errors, especially in regards to native plant species versus naturalized. I've been told that we accept naturalized, and according to the USDA, that actually includes invasive species, like the blackberry bushes that we can't seem to get rid of. So there's an issue there. And the other issue was that I'm seeing arborist reports where there's no recommendation for the protection of trees. they're being done incorrectly. And there's no oversight at City Hall to correct those errors. I've contacted City Hall and they always say based on our interpretation, which seems unlawful, that code is being interpreted in a way to demolish our trees, and it doesn't actually line up with municipal code, the way it's written out, and the way it specifies, exactly how to do a certified arborist report. And I'm just a citizen, I'm a mom who works full time. I don't have time to read these documents, but I just want everyone to know that there's no oversight on errors. Errors are being made constantly at City Hall and nobody's doing anything. I don't know who to contact with those errors. There's nobody there to fix those errors. And certainly City Hall themselves won't fix it because they just go back to based on our interpretation. Because I guess they can interpret things that are black and white. And that to me is really disturbing. So I would like somebody to follow up with City Hall and ask, why are you making interpretations on stuff that it's already laid out, that people just need to be following the rules? Yeah, that's basically all I have. It just has to do with the tree protection, and when those trees are cut down, then it's too late. You can't do that over.
Okay, Jackie, thank you very much for your comments tonight. Do we have anybody else in the attendees group that would like to provide comment tonight? Please raise your hand. Anybody else? Last call for citizens' comments. Okay, I'm not seeing any raised hands. So with that, we'll move on to council business. Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So let's move on. Let's start with, where is everybody? Councilmember Jorstad.
Thank you, Council President Daughtry. Really quick about that last comment. Could we also get some information? I think that the speaker mentioned natural species versus native species. I would love to know more, just maybe at the next workshop, if someone could describe the difference between those, and maybe we could take a look at the code. That'd be great. Thanks. A few things to report. I attended both the Snohomish Health District Executive Board meeting and the Alliance for Housing Affordability meetings last week. An item for the council to consider, and I'll send out an email with this in more depth. The Alliance for Housing Affordability Director is interested in knowing if councils would like more information on some of the following topics. He's put together a few presentations, primarily specific to affordable housing, but talking about the social, economic, and environmental impacts of not having affordable housing in our community, strategies to increase affordable housing, tools for elected officials, and the emerging non-market housing strategies. So I'm going to send out an email. Would love some input, or I'll have Kelly send it out about those topics. And if there's any interest, we can invite Mr. Collier to come and present some information on affordable housing in Snohomish County. I also just want to acknowledge another incident that happened last week. There was a report of some hate speech that was graffitied on a roundabout at Highway 92 and 113th. And just really appreciate, I brought it to the attention of Mayor Gailey and Chief Bezziso, and Eric Derpos and Jean, and really appreciate the quick responses, the ideas. I learned something new. I didn't know there was a 24/7 public works emergency phone number that people can call, and would love to kind of talk about how to get that number out so folks know about it. But I also really want to thank the community members who sort of sprung into action to get rid of that graffiti quickly. I think, the main issue was they wanted to remove it before the buses came the next morning, before kids riding the buses saw it, but also just before it became kind of at the forefront of our community. So want to thank publicly Andrea Orr, Dina Bittinger, and Sue Ellen Santos Frank and her husband for getting the ace and getting the materials to get that graffiti erased. And I know there was a comment also that someone who saw that is a member of the Mayor's Community Action Committee. So hoping that can be addressed there, and just talked about how, as a community, how do we want to respond when there are when our public areas are defaced in that way. So thanks to everyone for their response. That's all I have tonight. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Frederick.
I have nothing to report this evening. Thank you, President Daughtry.
Thank you. Councilmember Tagent.
Let's see, did sewer district today with Councilmember Peters Hagan and the mayor. Good report. Looks like they're coming out with a comprehensive plan this fall. It'll be something for us all to be looking at, as what areas they're concentrating on, and make sure it aligns with what the city has. Other than that, I don't have anything to report. God power's back on.
Thank you. Councilmember Ewing.
Thank you. So attended planning commission meeting on Wednesday the 15th. That was a good meeting, good discussion from our planning commission. And to Gabe's comments and Jackie's comments from earlier, really appreciate the work that the Youth Council is doing and their efforts. In fact, I was describing their efforts to one of our citizens in the community who also as a lobbyist, and she offered her services to the Youth Council to help them solicit funds for that sidewalk free of charge. She was really encouraged by the efforts of these high school students to reach out and to make their community a better place. So I'm grateful to be a part of that council with Youth Council, along with Council President Daughtry and Council Member Frederick. That's it for me.
Thank you. Councilmember Dickinson.
I appreciated the chance to sit in on the Community Advisory Committee last week and hear from Chief Pizziso, as well as the one young woman who talked about, again, as Angie mentioned, as Councilmember Angie mentioned, talking about the racist graffiti on 92nd. I was glad the citizens did a rapid cleanup of that. I didn't realize I knew all of them. Thanks for giving me the names. I also attended 2 Boy Scout functions. At one, the young men had some very great ideas and questions about parks, transportation, President Daughtry, a new library, and a need for another skate park. I'm not so sure about that, but that's what they talked about. And safety at the intersection nearest the current skate park that we have down on near 20th, and so much more. They also asked if they could do service to the community through the city. And I'm hoping that we can connect some of them with Jill Meese, or maybe connect them with the Youth Advisory Committee. This could be a good place for them to be. My second Boy Scout experience was to interview a young man seeking his life badge, which precedes Eagle, I learned. The mayor was there as well, which was a surprise, and it was great fun to talk to that young man. Snow Isle Libraries in the city had a meeting on Friday, and we all felt it was very helpful as we considered next steps for the Civic Center. I'm also taking a course addressing how to create an inclusive workplace, which is a great way for me to get a better sense of how our city employees come to work together. So it was a really positive week for me.
Thank you, Councilmember Dickinson. Councilmember Peters Hagan.
Thank you. Excuse me. I attended the Utility Committee also with Mayor Gailey and Councilmember Tangent this afternoon. In addition to the comprehensive plan that the sewer district is now embarking upon, which will address our Hartford issue. Interesting to note that the environmental standards for discharge of the treatment plant are going to be potentially increasing greatly, which equates to cost. And so I bring that up at this point because the ever-changing regulatory environment that we deal with, and it kind of relates back to Councilmember Jorstad's comments about affordable housing and so forth. I'd be interested to hear from the gentleman on the affordable housing, the relationship of regulatory requirements and how it affects affordable housing. I think that'd be a wonderful discussion. So with that, also I have, and mentioning with the sewer district, we had a meeting in person, which was quite enjoyable. And I would strive and hopefully ask at some point in time, we as a council could do the same. The sewer district has a interactive screen, I guess I might call it, for lack of technical terms, that allows other folks. City Administrator Brazel was involved, as well as some other folks from the sewer district side. We were all together in a room, and I would like the city to explore that. I don't quite understand why we can't do that, but I will ask once again, hopefully, that we can get back to in-person meetings. I think there's a lot to be said for being in person versus this Zoom stuff. So hopefully my Christmas wish will come true someday. Secondly, I have a resolution that if Kelly would be so kind to bring up on the screen here, that I would request us to look at tonight, and also hopefully vote on this. And in the meantime, while Kelly's bringing that up, hopefully Chief Bezizos would offer some comments in regards to this. As everyone has heard the buzz about with the new law enforcement standards, there is not any clarity to that. A lot of law enforcement agencies are hands off at this point. I think it's going to dramatically affect our community. And this is merely a resolution requesting the governor, the Washington State Legislature, and the State Attorney General to assist in providing clarification of new law enforcement standards and requirements. This is not a resolution that backtracks by any means. It's a resolution encouraging our leaders to clarify what they're trying to do. So with that, hopefully Chief Bezizos will maybe highlight some of the difficulties he's dealing with, and hopefully we can discuss this and vote on this tonight.
Do you want me to speak now or speak later?
No, I would request that you speak now, if that's okay with the Council President.
It is.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, council members. To talk about initiatives are House Bills 1310 and 1054 and 5051, which is the decertification. There's some ambiguities that are going on in the law that's hard to interpret for our legal advisors, our insurance carriers, and our officers out on the streets. I've had the privilege to meet with Representative Lovick and Representative Goodman last week with Marysville Police Department Chief and Arlington Police Chief. We sat around the table, discussed what was going on, and gave them some of our perspective of what's happening in each of our communities. We recently had an incident, just to give you up to speed, as the State Patrol was in pursuit of a suspect who barricaded himself into one of our cul-de-sacs in the south end of the town. He had a firearm and he was kind of suicidal. He was deciding whether to take his own life or not officer's life. He did come out with a firearm, and we were able to discharge what's called a less lethal 40 millimeter impact weapon, which dislodged the firearm from his hand. He was able to take him into custody and get him the assistance that he needed. Now, with these House bills that are in place for use of force, we are not allowed to carry a 40 millimeter impact less lethal weapon. They are military equipment considered by definition, so we have to keep those on the shelf until we get this taken care of. I'm looking forward to it. Our local chief, my colleague from Marysville, sits on the WASPIC executive legal team with legislation team, and he is committed to help us and help the local chiefs here to get our voice heard down in Olympia. And on January 27th, if all goes well, they will be down there. Unfortunately, I can't make it because I have a prior commitment, but our legislators are sitting around the table listening to us and trying to figure this all out and get the things corrected that we need to get back to being able to keep our communities safe.
I would like to also state that the city of Everett has passed this resolution on September 8th. There are other municipalities that are considering this. And if Chief Bezos has any other information as to other jurisdictions that have passed a similar resolution, I would invite that he comment on that. I'm not aware of any. I do know that the city of Everett adopted it on September 8th. And again, I would request that we consider this and vote on this tonight.
That is the only one I've heard of, Councilmember Peters Hagan. I know there's going around the state, other agencies or cities are doing this, but I have not heard any that have passed.
All right, thank you. So with that, Council President Daughtry, I don't know how you want to handle this. It's up on our screen right now. Section 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the mechanisms of this resolution that would encourage our governor, legislative delegation, to make a request of the governor and the state attorney general to help us out in trying to clarify what the intent of these law enforcement standards are.
Well, as with other wait a minute, Angie, Councilmember Jorstad.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I can't see the whole document, so I'd love an opportunity to be able to review the bottom section. I guess. Oh, there we go. That's great. Thanks. I would like to. That's great. Thank you. I would like to lend just another perspective to this as a behavioral health professional and a licensed mental health professional. I have been involved in many conversations since July about how the ambiguity of this legislation is also impacting the ability of outreach behavioral health professionals to be able to do their work. I have lots of stories I'm not going to share tonight, but they're really, I think the intent of the legislation is one thing. The way that it is worded does not support law enforcement in simply accompanying a mental health professional to conduct an assessment in the field, to do the work that's necessary to potentially detain someone who is a danger to themselves or others. There are folks who are desperately in need of services, and because of the ambiguity of this legislation, we aren't able to we can ask law enforcement. They're not able to accompany behavioral health professionals in the field to provide much needed emergency services to folks that are in need. And so I am in full support of this legislation for numerous reasons. I think that clarification is definitely needed. So thanks for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Hold on.
Chief Bezos.
I've got one more to support what Councilmember Jorstad said. Just to give another story, is we had a young man, a young man with autism that left one of our local elementary schools. For 2 days in a row, we chased him down the highway, all the way almost to Highway 9, where he almost went into Highway 9 traffic. Due to these laws, we're not able to intervene, and that's what is scary for us, is we would hope we could help get him the resources that he needed and to be able to take him into custody. Luckily, we were able to get a hold of the parents, which took a few minutes to get to the school to be able to take custody of this subject. But these are the mental health and working with DRCs and our social services workers. It's impacting that dramatically.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Ewing.
I had a question of clarification for Councilmember Jorstad. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that different perspective for us. I was confused at the end. I thought I heard you say you were supportive of the legislation, but we're also supportive of the resolution. So I was a little confused there.
Sure. Yeah, I support the intent behind the legislation. I think it's poorly written and it needs clarification. Law enforcement need to know very clearly what the expectations are and what the ramifications are. And I don't think that this legislation spells that out. So while I think the intent was to, consider less restrictive means of engaging with folks that are having behavioral health issues, I don't think that this legislation is clear. Does that help?
That does. Thank you.
Any other comments on the resolution as it's stated? Councilmember Dickinson?
Yes, I just think it's time. I did go on 2 ride-alongs with sergeants in the police force, and I heard some frustration and unhappiness, and for good reason. And I think this would be a good idea.
Thank you. Councilmember Frederick?
Yeah, I would just say that I agree with everything that's been said, and have certainly heard stories similar to Chief Pizzizo's that he shared this evening, and clarification is certainly warranted. I guess my only thought is that I would have loved to have seen this at our workshop last week, when we clearly had a lot of time that we could have kind of read this in advance.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, I definitely support taking steps to get the clarification that we need for our law to have more time to digest it.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Frederick. Councilmember Ewing?
Showing my ignorance here, I can't get my hand down, so I'm not sure how to do that. I didn't put it back up again, but it's still up. So
Okay. Just click on the hand again, just the way you raise it. There you go. And anybody else have any other comments about this resolution? Well, if not, because we've done resolutions at councilperson's business before, I believe that Councilmember Jorstad did one a few weeks ago. I would like to call for a vote on, or I'd call for a motion on the resolution.
Move to adopt resolution number 2021 TAC 14.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Resolution is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Council Member Peter Sagan for bringing that forward. I think it is time to have the legislature have us come at them and say, hey, get some work done here and get this thing clarified. So I'm last on the list tonight. I'll make it short. I was at the SCIT meeting this morning prior to our executive committee meeting at the city. David Killingstad from the county gave a great presentation on the GMA and the countywide planning policy. I sent the slide deck, or I had Kelly send the slide deck out to the council today, and I gave it to Russ. It was a very well done slide presentation of how the GMA, or some of the things about GMA, where it came from and what it really has in it. It makes it really easy to understand. There's one slide in there that talks about each of the different criteria that are in the GMA. Some of them seemingly fight each other, but there it is. So anyway, I sent that out so you could look at it. I understand that we're going to get another look at the GMA here shortly. Russ is going to be giving us something in the next couple of weeks. So this might help us understand better what Russ is going to be talking about. And that's all I had. So now it's up to the mayor.
All right, great reports from everybody. I'd like to express my thanks for passing that resolution. I think it's a good resolution. We need to get some good clarification for our police officers on what they can and can't do out there from the legislature. So thank you very much for passing that. Councilmember Jorstad, thank you for bringing up the graffiti situation. I was going to talk about it, but you spoke eloquently on it, so I'm not going to continue. Although I will say we did have a discussion about it in my advisory council, and had a real good, valuable discussion on that I think was good for everybody there. Been working on the budget. Wanted the council to know mostly my two priorities for this budget that we're working on right now is to take a step back this next year on all the work that we do all the time in this city, and take the opportunity to get our policies, our procedures, and what we do all in line. And so for my guidance to staff on that is I believe that going through the American Public Works Association accreditation will help us in getting the right things in the right place and in the right order. So that is going to be our focus in this budget cycle, is looking at the APWA accreditation and going through that this next year, next 18 months. And in addition to that as well, implementing the GIS enterprise system for asset management and asset maintenance. So just letting you know where my focus is going to be in this budget. Additionally, tomorrow, I will be giving Mayor Cassie Franklin from Everett a tour of the city that will start with the water line at 91st and how we're replacing their old water line. And I didn't realize it, but line number 1 is from 1930. So it's really, really old. And you can tell it's really, really old because it's sitting on the side of the road looking like 1930s, really, really old pipeline. So that will be discussion as part of our overall water line discussion tomorrow. So looking forward to having her up here. She's great. I enjoy her, and then I'll give her a tour of the rest of our great city so she knows all the great things we're doing up here. So with that, let's move to, I don't have any department reports. Let's go to the guest business, which is going to be Heather Thomas. And she works for a great organization that I think is headed by a pretty good person, pretty good guy. And she's with the Public Government Affairs Manager for Snohomish Health District. Heather, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. Give me just a minute and I will share my screen here. All right. Okay. Hopefully Council can see my presentation okay. Great. Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be back here with you all at the City of Lake Stevens. Again, I'm Heather Thomas, Public and Government Affairs Manager with the Snohomish Health District. Wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update on some trends and some data happening around Snohomish County as well as in your city. So these are also framed around our strategic goals at the health district. So one goal is reducing the rate of communicable diseases and other notifiable conditions. We do have on the screen some of the data for 2021. On some of these, we can't give information at the city level just for public or health information reasons, but generally looking at our state trends here in Snohomish County compared to 2020, this is data through the end of July, early August. It is good to see that we have chlamydia, hepatitis B and C, and pertussis are all down from comparable years. And we're seeing a relative plateauing or flattening for gonorrhea and new cases of HIV, as well as tuberculosis. But we are seeing an increase in syphilis in Snohomish County. So just for some data points, through June in 2021, there was 32 cases of syphilis compared to 25 cases in that time frame last year. And then when we look at an increase from 2019 to 2020, the total number of cases in 2019 was 46, and then we had 60 new cases last year. That increase in syphilis is being seen around the region, and the Department of Health has provided the health district a little bit of money to look at some of those syphilis rates. So our prevention services team will be doing some work on that in the coming months ahead. Looking at preventing or reducing chronic diseases and injuries, we have a few different data points, but tonight I'd like to focus on drug overdoses, which are unfortunately up, but youth suicides are down. Looking here at our drug overdose data, this is a chart you might be familiar with that shows the red line is the trend for all opioid overdose deaths here in Snohomish County. This is preliminary data through the end of August. And you'll see preliminary numbers for 2020 do show the highest we've had at 182 opioid-related overdose deaths in Snohomish County. And through the end of August, there were 81 already here in 2021. The blue bar is all drugs. So Department of Health has noted that there is an increase in not only opioids, but also meth and cocaine and mixed drug use. So opioids combined with another substance. The other piece we've shared before, but fentanyl is increasing in Snohomish County. That's that light blue or aqua colored synthetic opioids. We are seeing an increase of that across Snohomish County as well. When we look at youth suicides, thankfully, it's a little bit of a better picture. The school year 2020 to 2021 was the first school year in recent history that there had not been any suicides involving youth in our schools, which was great news. Wendy Burchell, who's one of our healthy community specialists and the child death review coordinator for Snohomish County, was part of a group that came together to look at that, to find out what might have been some of the protective measures in place, and how can community members take some of those and look at policy and prevention efforts to keep that number going. This data here is looking at EMS Dispatch, so it's also showing the number of calls related to suicidal ideation was down through 2020. And there was a report that has been published. It's called the Zero Suicide Discussion. If you are interested in that presentation, I can coordinate to have Wendy give that to the council, or there's a report we can share by email. But a couple of things that they noted in this was, while there were concerns about youth being home a lot and potentially in unsafe environments, actually having other people in the household was a protective factor. Youth can have suicidal ideation when they're home alone. So having siblings, parents, or guardians, or other people in the house was a protective factor. Another piece was with Zooms and adjusted school schedules, youth were able to get a little bit more sleep. And when there were testing situations, it was typically at home or potentially in a hybrid situation where there was less students in the classroom, and that helped relieve some of the anxiety around testing. So those were just a few of the protective factors that this committee found. You may have also seen a press release recently that there is now a youth suicide task force here in Snohomish County, and the health district is a proud partner with a number of other coalition partners. So stay tuned as they work on that in the year ahead. Moving to environmental health and providing high quality service. These are some data points for Lake Stevens. So there's been 141 food permits issued in Lake Stevens. 71 food establishments have had inspections. There were 17 food complaints around businesses that our environmental health specialists have followed up with, and 8 water recreation facilities. This picture in the background is actually a pool in Snohomish County, and with the shutdowns last year, many pool and water recreation operators closed for the entire year. And so our environmental health specialists have been quite busy this year helping pool operators make sure that everything is clean and well maintained, that chemical loads are balanced, and that all of the safety features are in good condition so that we can make sure people are healthy and safe when they're getting back in their pools. This is a snapshot of land use activity, which I'm sure is no surprise, but has been picking up here in 2021. And the land use team was also able to fill some needed positions this last year. So they're working to get caught up and increase the turnaround time for permit reviews and inspections out in the field. When we look at maternal, child, and family health outcomes, there's a few different programs, but the biggest right now is our child care and health outreach team. That team has done over 600 child care consultations with providers across Snohomish County. They've also expanded the number of courses that are offered for STARS credit, which is an annual continued learning for their certification. We have a number of programs that are offered not only to Snohomish County child care providers, but around the state. And over 1,300 courses were completed by Snohomish County child care providers through the end of June. Other projects that the teams have been working on, a big focus is really on catching up on childhood vaccines. The Snohomish County data, as well as Washington data, did show that well-child visits were down and regular childhood vaccines were also behind. And so there's been a lot of outreach through schools and healthcare providers and other partners to try to get people back in, get their sports physicals, get their well-child checkups, and make sure that they're getting caught up on all of their vaccines. The team's also been working on adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, and resilience webinars and materials, and then also some campaigns around the ABCs of safe sleep. I'd like to point out that October is actually Sudden Infant Death Syndrome Awareness Month, and so there's also some campaigns that we'll be rolling out in the coming weeks. Looking at vital statistics, here's a comparison of 2020 to 2021 data, both for birth and death certificates through June. Those numbers are a little bit higher, but a couple of things that I really want to point out are some changes that your constituents might be seeing. One is that the health district and many partners across the state have moved to a platform called Vital Check that allows for some extra security to make sure that we're preventing identity fraud and giving people that peace of mind of requesting sensitive information through the internet. It also increases and helps with paying for their certificates online. Along with that, there's some new kiosks. When we're having more people in the lobby, kiosks have been installed, but we're waiting for some final programming and updates to bring those online. But people will be able to come into the lobby and, just like an ATM or other self-help station, be able to request those through the kiosk. And lastly, due to some legislative changes, Washington State is now considered a closed record state this year. And that has two things I want to point out. One, going back to vital records and trying to reduce identity fraud, it restricts the types of individuals that can request birth and death certificates. And then it also restricts the type of data that the health district is able to release. So you'll notice that primarily on some of our death data, if there's numbers under 5, we have to mask them so that we don't accidentally provide any identifying information. And there's more updates on all of those on our website if you're interested. Looking at ongoing and critical public health issues, obviously, first and foremost is the COVID pandemic. So I want to give just a couple quick updates on this. This was the rolling case rate last week, but since we've sent you guys the slides, it was updated just yesterday. The new case rate is 409. So we are glad to see a continued decrease, but 409 is still extremely high transmission levels. We're really encouraging people to get vaccinated and mask up and limit their interactions with people outside their household. We'd really like to see those numbers decrease. Our hospitals, I'm sure you've been seeing in the media and from other constituents, are stressed. As of today, there were 84 individuals in Snohomish County hospitalized and 14 requiring medical ventilation. We've also seen our deaths increasing, and we've broken 700. So as of Sunday, there were 709 residents who've lost their lives to COVID-19. Another data point, I'd like to give kudos to Lake Stevens for being one of the highest vaccination rate zip codes in Snohomish County. This is a map we update, or a couple maps we update monthly that look at our case rates and vaccination rates by zip code. And you'll see that the higher case rates are typically in those zip codes that have the lowest vaccination rates. There's a number of reports that we also update monthly. One of those is the detailed epidemiology report that just came out last week. And that looks at all cases, hospitalizations, and deaths and gives some breakdowns for vaccination status. So if you're interested, I encourage you to check those out. And looking ahead, again, we're still focused on preserving that hospital capacity, particularly as we move into flu season. We want to make sure that people that need emergency care can get that care. We're also, this has been updated since Friday, the possibility of boosters is real, as the FDA and CDC did authorize that on Friday. So we're working to have our community clinics come online, but also healthcare providers and pharmacies can now give those boosters for Pfizer vaccines for individuals that are 6 months past their second dose, particularly for those over the age of 65 or with compromised immune systems or working in potentially high-risk settings. And then, as I mentioned, really worried about what the fall brings as more and more people come indoors instead of outdoors. And we'll be working on some messaging and around that as we move forward. And the last goal to talk about is just moving towards a sustainable organization. Here's a quick snapshot of our budget outlook. You'll notice that there was a pretty significant change between the adopted and amended budget for the health district. This is all because of COVID dollars. Right now, we are projecting a little under $8 million surplus, but that will be held in reserve as we anticipate COVID activities continuing into 2022 and 2023. There's also some other funding that's still in flux, that's including COVID funding and the extensions or where those dollars are coming from and the specific scopes of work that we have for that money that comes to us. We're also very grateful to the state legislature for authorizing foundational public health services funding. There was some significant investments that continue to increase over the coming years, but still working out what those allocations mean for Snohomish County and how those will get applied. And then also looking at other funding streams, which would include the foundation and grant dollars. We appreciate Lake Stevens' participation as a per capita contribution city. Just a reminder, if investing for 2022, that does cover the naloxone for your law enforcement, as well as data and monitoring with that. If Lake Stevens is interested in any special data or reports, our staff can help support that. And then it also has access to our Healthy Communities and Policy team for any special initiatives that Lake Stevens might have. And on the foundation front, want to give just a quick update that the foundation board is in place and they're in the process of working with some consultants to develop a strategic plan and a fundraising plan for the next few years. They are an official nonprofit here in Washington, are going to be filing their paperwork shortly for 501c3 and anticipate that coming in 2022. There's also now a website and a logo. It's soundfoundationph.org. So encourage you to take a peek and monitor as they grow next year. And then just in closing, some ways that your council can get involved or other staff or constituents from the city of Lake Stevens. We have a number of materials that we put online that you can include in newsletters or emails or other communication that you have go out. These are graphics, we have social media content and videos. And we're also always looking for partners that are willing to do a short video, encouraging people to either vax up or mask up. These are just a few of the people from around Snohomish County that have worked with us. If you're interested, please reach out to me. And with that, there's my contact information. I'm happy to take any questions.
Heather, I got a couple of questions. The zero suicide discussion that you said you had that we could have brought to the council. Could we also bring that besides to the council, if the council decided to do it? Could we also have that go to a group such as the Youth Advisory Council?
Absolutely.
So is there a way I could have the Youth Advisory Council get a hold of you and schedule a time for you to come talk to them? They are, they're doing great things in that area already on their website by putting on resources. I'm not sure that they know about the Youth Suicide Task Force or not. I'll be looking into that with them shortly, but I'd like to have them contact you when they get it in their agenda to have that presentation.
Yeah, I'd be happy to reach out to me and I can connect them with Wendy. I know she's worked with a number of youth councils and advisory groups to do similar presentations.
Thank you, Heather.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have any questions for Heather?
I have no questions.
Yeah. I saw that smile.
I have a quick question, but due to Heather's presentation, thank you for the updated information. That actually brings up a question I have for Councilman Peter Sagan. Given your request to have in-person meetings, I'm just curious, did the health, or I'm sorry, not the health district, did the sewer commission meeting that was in person, were there masks or any other COVID precautions during those meetings or any rules around social distancing?
You froze when you said, were there masks? And then
Oh,
didn't hear you.
sorry. I'm just curious to know if there were any COVID precautions, masks, social distancing, vaccines required. Curious how they were able to move into a in-person setting.
Yes, we were all socially distanced and we all had masks on.
Oh, great. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Heather, for your presentation.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Hey, thank you very much, Heather, for being here. Let's move on to the next item, and that is the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to pass the consent agenda, please?
Move to pass the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to pass the consent agenda. Do I have any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, consent agenda passes. So with that, we're going to move to discussion, or, I'm sorry, let's go back to, we have a couple of introductions. Russ, can you intro, we have two new employee introductions, I'm sorry. And Russ, could you intro Christy, please?
Absolutely. Good evening, Council. It's my pleasure to introduce Christy Schmidt. She's our newest planner. She's a senior planner. She's been in the profession for about 27 years, most recently at the city of Mill Creek, where she's been a long-time employee. She has a great skill set in both current and long-range planning with an emphasis in current planning. So we're really glad to have her. And as a Northwesterner, she likes outdoor activities such as hiking and camping and gardening. So really pleased to have her. And if you'd like to say hello to the council, please do so. In the past, we used to make you run the gauntlet where you would have to shake everyone's hands. Now it's kind of a virtual high five, but welcome to the team.
Thank you, Russ. I appreciate that. I'm very happy and honored to be here at City of Lake Stevens and have the opportunity to work with Russ and David and their planning team. And I'll go ahead and give you a virtual handshake, council members. And I do look forward to actually meeting you in person here one day soon.
Welcome, Christy.
Yeah, welcome, Christy.
Yes, welcome.
Welcome, Christy.
Welcome to the city.
Thank you very much.
Great. And then Troy, I think we're going to do Zach as well, right?
Yes, we are. It's very excited. Good evening, council. We're very excited to have Zachary come on board. As Brett had alluded to earlier, we are really going to be focusing on our systems and processes. And a big portion of that is our GIS infrastructure. And that's kind of the backbone of all of our asset management systems. So Zach is joining us. He started in July, so we're a little bit late getting him to meet you guys. So sorry about that. I had some vacation time that passed up on that. But he comes to us. He's got a bachelor's degree in GIS information systems and informatics. He also had a 12-week program in a full stack web development. So he likes to code. So he's a geek like me. He's worked as a GIS analyst for the city of, for Seattle Public Utilities in the wastewater and sewer department. So very nice about that. As far as his home life, he's married, he's got 2 children. He's got a new baby, actually. I think, what did you say, 3 months now? Zach?
No, he is he's 4 weeks old.
Oh, 4 weeks old. Okay, yeah, very new. So he's actually currently living in Seattle, but he's very excited to move finally into Lake Stevens. He's going to be joining us as a citizen of Lake Stevens. So that's very cool. He enjoys golfing and paintball. That's kind of his activity that he likes. And yeah, he's been currently working on our GIS infrastructure. So we've kind of got that up and running. We were working with Flow Analytics to kind of help us build and get that stuff going, but he's really just hit the ground running on that and really making some improvements. So we already got him completed some software. So we're really excited to have him on board. So with that, if you can just maybe say something to the council or just introduce yourself a little bit to them, that'd be great.
Yeah, hi. I'm also very excited to be working here. I'm also moving up to Lake Stevens on the 1st, so I'm excited to do that. And I appreciate the opportunity. Let me know if you need any maps or data. I'm your guy.
Welcome, Zach.
Thank you.
Welcome.
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 Good stuff. So I will let you know, I've been working with both Christy and Zach since they came on board. Very quality hires, Christy's working hard on figuring out our GIS enterprise package that we're going to go with. She's doing great there. And I think that Zach's sideways camera is it us or is it him? And he's messing with us. I think he's just messing with us. There we go. So I'll tell you, I hit Zach last week with, hey, how many garbage cans do we have in our GIS layer? And he was probably wondering, what is this mayor talking about? But I have a plan. So yeah, keeping him on his toes. He's doing a great job. So good stuff. Let's move on to discussion items. L, non-conforming code update. Melissa.
You're going to introduce Caitlin?
What was that?
I saw Caitlin Weaver to be introduced as a deputy clerk.
Caitlin's not here tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she'll be rescheduled to October 12th. Thanks.
So Melissa, you have the floor, and Melissa is, let me say a couple things about Melissa. Melissa, if you don't know Melissa, she's one of our great hidden gems. She rocks planning, and I just thoroughly enjoy having her at City Hall. She does great work for everybody. But I just want to give you some accolades because I think it's what we should do. So.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate that. Okay, appreciate that. So good evening, Council. Tonight, staff is bringing to you a briefing on proposed amendments to the city's non-conforming code regulations for the first time. Non-conforming regulations address existing lots, structures, or uses that don't comply with our current zoning regulations. The intent and purpose of the Lake Stevens non-conforming code is to have all structures and uses eventually come into conformance with the city's land codes and regulations. This is a city-initiated code amendment based on staff fielding numerous questions over the last few years on non-conforming uses and structures in the city. And we identified a need to update the code to provide more clarity to both staff and property owners, hence the reason for this code amendment. So some of the goals that we had with this code amendment were to update the code to follow more traditional non-conforming zoning law, to revise the terminology, the definitions for nonconformities to provide greater clarity, to streamline and simplify the non-conforming process for staff and property owners, to dovetail our code with our shoreline regulations, and to also consider different zoning approaches to manage nonconformities. A little overview of the code amendment process. So the proposed amendments were introduced to the Planning Commission earlier this year in June. The commission has held a total of 3 work sessions in June, August, and September. And this is council's first introduction and work session for the amendments. And staff sent a 60-day notice to Commerce on September 10th and issued a SEPA exemption for the amendments on that same day. So some of the guidance we heard from Planning Commission and also the feedback was specific about whether the sub areas should be treated differently than other parts of the city, that they considered a process for the expansion of non-conforming uses. We discussed potential amortization provisions, how the proposed language might encourage or discourage the retention of single-family residences. What should the threshold for destruction of non-conforming structures be, and whether additional stories on a building constitute an expansion of a non-conforming structure or use. Based on all that guidance, staff has made revisions to the draft code incorporating the commission's input, and the code that you have before you tonight reflects that. And I believe that's exhibit 1 and 2 to the staff report that's in front of you. So just some highlights of what this proposed code amendment is doing, and just the summary of what it contains is that it's really a complete rewrite of section 1432 with revisions to 1408, which is our definitions chapter, and also revisions, a very brief revision to 1438.017, which is our sub-area section. It does not allow non-conforming use to be enlarged or expanded, which aligns with our current shoreline language. That's where we're trying to dovetail it. It does allow a non-conforming structure to be altered or enlarged so long as that the extent of the non-conformity isn't increased. It also allows a single-family residence that has been destroyed to be rebuilt in the exact same footprint, but not enlarged or expanded, which is what our current code allows. It also revises terminology of nonconformities, including revised and new definitions under LSMC 1408, which is what I had mentioned earlier. It also revises the improvement threshold for repaired or altered non-conforming structures to be 25% and the destruction threshold to be 75%. And last but not least, revises the abandonment termination period for non-conformities from 6 months to 12 months. So we increased that based on feedback from the Planning Commission, where 6 months seemed to be a little too short, 24 months too long. So 12 months seemed to be the sweet spot. So the next steps and sort of the schedule that's outlined in the staff report is that the public hearing before the Planning Commission is going to be held on October 6th. Then we anticipate holding another work session with you, the council, after the commission's hearing, and then having the council hold a public hearing on this code amendment November 9th, and that's tentative if desired by the council at that point. So with that, I conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time on this. Thank you.
So I do have one on your overview of what this incorporates. You said it allows a single family residence that's been destroyed to be rebuilt in the same footprint, but not enlarged or expanded, which the current code allows. I'm assuming that that single family resident was non-conforming to begin with.
Yes, so that would be a non-conforming single family residence. So we have, I should distinct, there is a distinction between legal and illegal non-conforming uses. So the code is only addressing legal non-conforming uses, not illegal, which basically means they had to have, they didn't get the permitting and weren't in place prior to when the ordinance was adopted. So for non-conforming residents, if it was to burn down and needed to be rebuilt, it could be built in the exact same footprint. But our current code also allows it to be expanded and enlarged, which is a little bit unusual in the non-conforming zoning world. Traditional zoning law doesn't allow you generally to expand or enlarge a non-conforming use. So we're trying to bring it back to that traditional use, which is intended really for the eventual elimination of non-conformities, because there's areas in the city that want to see economic growth, and those uses continue to remain unless they change through a non-conforming status. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So Melissa, I have a question. So if someone had a non-conforming Rambler and they, their structure burns down and they want to make it a 2-story, or a 3-story, does our code support that if it maintains the current footprint? Is that, would that be allowed?
So our current code does allow that, and the new code would allow that. And when you start to talk about stories, that is one of the questions we get asked quite often, and our code was fairly silent on. And so we would always do an interpretation, is that it didn't clarify whether additional stories could be added. So the general rule with non-conforming uses and structures is that you can't increase the degree of non-conformity. So there's always this question, well, if you are building an additional story or 2, is that increasing the degree of non-conformity? Well, it kind of depends on what they're showing. If it's beyond the existing footprint, then yeah, that would be increasing it. But if they're just going up vertically and not increasing out, then that doesn't necessarily increase the extent of nonconformity. And so both our current code and the new code is intended to explicitly say that additional stories can be added as long as it doesn't increase that extent of nonconformity, just to clarify that for property owners.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, if I may speak, I just want to say that is great news, because one of the things we have as a problem in Lake Stevens is we do not have enough land to build on. Let's face it. And if we can't go up, then we have to go out, and that's a problem for us. So I'm very relieved to hear that that remains something that you can do as an option. For example, I often picture over there at Jay's Market, what if they had apartments over that little shopping center there? That'd be great. You'd have housing, but it also would be not adding to the footprint at all. So good to hear. Thank you for that change.
I should add, with the clarification of whatever the zoning district height limitation is, they still have the confines of the development standards for that zoning district. But if it's 35 feet, which is generally, I think, our height limitation for zoning for single family residential districts, they can be built up to a second or third story as long as they're under that. So good question. Yeah.
All right, do we have anything else for Melissa? All right, great job, Melissa.
Thank you.
Let's move on to Barb, estimated revenues and preliminary budget.
Hello there. Kelly, can I share my screen, please?
Yes, you should have full access.
Can everyone see my screen? Yes? Anybody?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. Great. Okay, so this is our intro to the 2022 budget. This is going to be an overview of our base budget. So let me go ahead and get right into here. So the first thing I have here is our preliminary budget calendar. This has changed slightly from what Kelly had sent out yesterday or the day before. Some conversations with the mayor, getting his budget recommendations in. Unfortunately, he's got a conference to go to and is out of town for a little bit. So we're kind of moving things around a little bit, which is actually good for me in order to get you guys more data by the time I do more presentations. So we're looking at, we're gonna skip going over budget discussions on October 5th, and then we will come back in October 12th, where we will go over all of the requests that were submitted by all of our departments, as well as the Capitol. And so I will have more data for you then. After that, we will go into the mayor's recommendations and then council discussion. We do have on the schedule November 2nd if needed. I do believe it has been discussed to cancel that meeting as that is election night. And so that might be something if it is needed. Maybe it can be a very brief meeting, but we will deal with that as we come closer to it. So we do have the public hearing scheduled for November 9th, and that's when we approve or pass the property tax ordinance, and then the final public hearing and budget adoption November 23rd. We also have December 14th as a final hearing date if we have continuation needs. So jumping right in, I did go over the 2021 budget revenues versus estimates at the council retreat, so I won't go too much into those. We are down on some of our revenues and up on others. Looking at our 2022 base, as you can see, I have consolidated these funds, general fund and then other general funds, which is your contingency, your permitting, and your ARPA funds. Consolidated special revenue funds, which is your street funds, and then all the rest of the other types as well. So other general fund, there is a decrease in 2022 base due to prior year interfund loan repayments. And so it looks like there's actually a decrease in the general fund, but that's or other general funds, and that's it's not due to any specific revenue source. It's just interfund loan repayments and some grant revenues. Then in the debt service, that is up 66%. That did increase due to additional bonds we issued last year. And then capital project funds. This shows a decrease right now as the base budget. We don't include, we don't have the grant reimbursements, or we're not going to be having bond proceeds that we know of yet. So none of that's budgeted. And then in the surface water management fund, this is due to interfund transfers between the surface water management operating fund, the capital fund, and the debt service fund. It's not actually reflective of actual revenues. It's just the interfund transfers in and out of the funds. So, and then we do still need to amend the budget for some grant revenues that we received this year, including the ARPA funds, into the 004, which is the ARPA fund. So I will be bringing that forward soon. Looking at our base expenditures for 2022, again, our other general fund, that is increasing due to our ARPA fund grant accounting. And then debt service, again, additional bonds issued. Capital projects, we don't have those budgeted yet. We'll show that in the all request and capital budget. Surface water management funds decreased 38%. Again, interfund transfers and some projects not budgeted yet for 2022. And then the equipment funds, those are the funds that we contribute money to from general fund, street fund, and stormwater fund. Those requests are not yet included, so we don't have what people have requested in the budget yet. And this is just a look at the base budgets for all funds. This is actually a requirement to get this to you prior to October 1st. So I just want to make sure that you have. This is just what the base looks like for all funds. We are spending overall less than we are bringing in revenues by about 800,000. It does vary by fund whether we are expending more than bringing in. There are reasons for that. General fund, we are dipping into our reserve funds that we have been accumulating for a number of years. We'll take a look at that a little bit more later. And then I like to show the major revenue sources. So again, I kind of went over the 2021 budget versus the 2021 estimated previously. And this takes a look at what we're expecting for 2022. So our largest revenue sources, of course, are taxes. So property taxes, sales tax, real estate excise tax, motor vehicle fuel tax, and utility taxes. Utility taxes are actually estimated to decrease slightly, and that is because we received a prior year back payment from a water utility. So it's only slated to decrease slightly, but and then we did have a spike in real estate excise taxes in 2020 that we're not going to assume that we will receive again in 2022. So we did bring that back down, but as you can see, we're still budgeting more than we did in 2021. And then our state shared revenues, those are the liquor, DUI, state shared on the screen. The liquor DUI state shared one includes the one-time distribution of the law enforcement criminal justice legislative assistance that we received. We received right about $140,000. It was based on population. And I believe the intended use by the police department, since it has to be used on police legislation, sort of unfunded mandates, is for body cams. So their intent is to use it on body cameras and then requests a little bit more additional funding each year for that. But in the next few years, those will be mostly funded by ARPA funds, I believe. So the rest of it we will start seeing again later years. And then the development fees, that is your building permits, zoning permits, traffic impact fees, and park impact fees. Those are fairly volatile revenue sources or revenue streams. As I mentioned, the traffic and park impact fees are coming in fairly low in 2021 compared to budget. And so we're gonna sort of estimate those a little lower than normal, and we'll just watch them for 2022 and see if we need to reevaluate. So speaking of revenues, we generally talk about the untapped revenues during budget time. We did go over these during the council retreat. Again, utility taxes, that is one that we can do. We do need to do a public hearing in order to impose utility taxes. And then there's some limitations on some. There's no taxes imposed currently on sewer or stormwater utilities. I have that table down at the bottom that I've shown previously, what our potential revenue could be if we went to the 6%. The 6% is what we are at for our electric, gas, water, garbage, and telephone right now. We've also talked about the Transportation Benefit District. This funding would go directly into the street fund or a subsidy a sub-fund of the street fund for street purposes. We've discussed the tab and the tax. The tab, $20 tab fee is basically councilmatic, and it would bring in about $550,000 per year to be used on those street projects and maintenance. And then park funding, I know that was a big discussion last time, and that's, you know, whether we want to look into doing a taxing district or a levy lid lift. Both of those do, I believe, need to go to the voters as well. And I have some questions into the county assessor to determine timing and limitations on the levy lid lift, like when we would have to have that done, when we would actually start seeing the funding. So I have some additional questions coming in. So looking at our general fund revenue assumptions for 2022, property tax, this does include the 1% allowable increase as well as new construction. Altogether, it's about a 5% increase. The new construction actually increased about 50% over the prior year. So it looks like our estimate for 2022 or 2021 construction was approximately $285,000. So its assessed value divided by the 1,000 and then multiplying by our current year's levy rate. So estimated about $285,000. That is in addition to our 1%. So that's why our increase is a bit higher. We do still have the allocation set at 72% to general fund, 28% to street fund. Our assessed value in Lake Stevens did increase quite a bit, like it normally has. And then our estimated levy rate is 91 cents per thousand. Again, this is going to change when we get our, we go from preliminary assessed values to actual assessed values. That is approximately 91 cents per thousand. Currently, we're at 99.5 cents per thousand. And then just a couple other things, ARPA funds, these are budgeted, will be budgeted in the 004, which is a management fund in the general fund. Those will be allocated out to other funds based on projects. As we've talked about, we are looking at doing stormwater projects with some of these funds, as well as some IT telecommute type projects and our fiber and looking at our infrastructure. So those will be allocated to other project funds. And what the plan is just to budget as if we're going to spend it all and then just continue forward, rolling it forward every year once we have our plan in place. Sales tax is actually slightly higher than our property tax in general fund. Again, property tax is split between general and street fund, but sales tax is about $4.6 million. And then permits, like I said, we have, we're being a little bit conservative on these. 1.5 million is what we budgeted in 2021 and did 500,000 in 2021. And unfortunately, we're expecting about 220. So sorry, I'm getting notification that my internet is unstable. So hopefully I don't freeze up on you. So let's see, what do I have in here? General fund expense assumptions. We have an estimated expenditures of 17.2 million. This is a 3% increase over 2021. That base increase for the majority of line items is approximately 1%. There are a couple of specific increases that were plugged into the base. That's increase in repair and maintenance and landscaping for the commercial building that we have, the what we call the subway building on South Lake Stevens Road. According to Public Works, there's likely a number of repairs that need to occur in that. So we do receive rent and utilities from them. And so this just allows us to actually do the repairs and maintenance that we need. Also, with the expectation of a special election in 2022, I did budget the estimated 75,000. If we do not have one, that money just stays in the general fund. And then again, ARPA funds fully received, fully spent. We'll just roll everything forward. So the largest portion of the expenditures for general fund, as usual, is salaries and benefits. The base budget is based on current staffing levels. And then we will need to talk more about cost of living increases. The current CPI is 6.3%. Many of the contracts and then also the non-represented calculation is often 90% of CPI with some minimum, some maximum. The guild, the commission guild and the Teamsters have a negotiated amount. They have a contract in place. Those are at 3%. The non-commissioned guild, so the records, they're currently under negotiation. So we haven't forecasted any increase there. And then the non-represented, that's where we, right now, I have forecasted in 3% in the forecast you'll see tonight. This could go anywhere from 3% to, I believe it's 5.9 or 5.8, which is 90% of CPI. I believe HR, Anya, Director Warrington is planning on bringing forward some additional information on COLAs and the CPI and what the differences would be between doing 3%, 4%, 5%, that type of thing, so that the non-commissioned staff does not fall even further behind than other jurisdictions, so that we can maintain our negotiation ability for salaries when it comes to attracting staff and keeping staff. But we estimate it really depends. We have a number of different insurances and plans people can be on, so we have that budgeted in there. And then some salaries and benefits will be offset by adjustments to through permit revenues or ARPA revenues or grant funds. Looking at the street fund assumptions, again, property tax, 1.5 million, allocation remains 28%. The other major revenue sources in that fund are the motor vehicle fuel tax and then the garbage utility tax. And then expenditures, again, salaries are the majority. This does estimate or assume to continue the annual pavement preservation at $500,000. I know Director Durbo has stated in the past that this is not enough to keep up with the citywide. So this is just kind of a placeholder at this point. Continue our contributions to the equipment fund. These may need to begin going up as the more equipment we purchase, the more we need to put into the replacement funds for future replacement. And then there's no capital projects included in the base budget yet. So, and then as the Mayor Gailey had mentioned, APWA certification, we are working through some cost assumptions on that, what that will take in staffing and equipment. So this street fund and the surface water fund, and as well as the parks fund, will likely see some increased costs due to that certification. And then in stormwater, our stormwater services charges, the assumption is a 4% increase. That is a estimated 1% increase of customers with an additional 3% increase that's in our fees resolution for this year based on our rate study. And then expenditures, again, salaries and benefits. The budget does continue the annual alum and milfoil treatment. We will look at this to see if that's a continued need or if it's, I know in the past we've talked about it might be in every other year or it might be more. So we'll look through the recommendations and requests of the Public Works Department and adjust those as needed. Capital expenditures, there's only ongoing capital payments included in the base budget right now. And so we don't have any of the larger surface water projects. And then because we're able to utilize ARPA funds on surface water projects, there are various projects that we're assuming will be funded that way instead of through this fund, saving this fund for future projects. And then our debt expenditures are about $230,000 a year, and that is for the Vactor and the decamp land purchase. Additionally, I wanted to mention we did eliminate the school district exemption in 2021, and that invoice has gone out to the school district, and it was approximately $150,000. So this is looking at our, as Council President Daughtry likes to call it, our graph of gloom and doom. It's not that gloomy right now. Our revenues did come in higher than we had anticipated. And as we've talked about previously, we did have some bumps in revenue with the CARES Act, which took care of some of our decreases in revenues, and then some of our other sales tax, et cetera, did not decrease the way we thought they would in 2021. So looking at this, the blue columns are revenues, the red are expenditures. We still have our black line at the bottom, that's our 10% reserve. The orange line at the bottom, that one is just solely general fund, operating fund. And then the green line is the operating fund as well as the reserve contingency fund. So this does include Costco and some ancillary taxing revenues beginning in 2023. So our 2022 budget does not include any anticipated revenues. Our 2023 budget does include anticipated full year of revenues. And then the majority of the governmental operation expenses are in the general fund. So that obviously, just a reminder, it includes a portion of the administrative departments, all police, parks, and the majority of the planning and building department. So I know it's always a question on here when you look at this, and it does look like it's a pretty good line. The question is, how much can we spend? How much can we increase expenditures in the general fund for 2022 and beyond? And it's a really good question. It's partly dependent on additional revenue sources. So if we get additional revenue sources coming into the general fund, obviously we can spend more on our operations. But without additional revenues, then our only source is to continue spending the one-time revenues, which are those construction sales tax that we put in our reserves on ongoing operating expenditures, which includes mostly salaries. And so that question really is dependent on how comfortable council and the mayor are on, spending those one-time revenues on ongoing expenditures without a solid plan in place for the replacement of those revenues when they run out. And we do see here, we are looking at, it's probably, I don't have it run out to 28, 29, but it's probably somewhere between 2028 and 2029 when all of our general fund reserves and general fund are to zero. I do have this set so I can show you if we say we spend an additional $300,000 in 2023, which is of ongoing costs. So if we add $300,000 worth of salaries, benefits, then we get down to our 10% line in 2027. So about 2 years earlier than we would expect to if we didn't spend any additional funding. So there's always a question that's posed of how much can we spend? It really depends on how comfortable council is, your comfort level and the risk level. So just looking at the same thing for street fund and stormwater fund, the street fund is mostly the property tax allocation, and no TBD funds are included in this, and no projects. So that does slowly decrease. And then the stormwater fund, that one is a little different. We have, there's only the ongoing capital projects in the 2022 budget, and then there's no additional capital projects in there, but there are assumed capital projects for the remaining years. We do assume we're going to continue doing surface water capital projects throughout the years. So that's why it dips down and then stays consistent with what we have based on our increases that were done in our rate study. So looking at our 2022 budget priorities, as Mayor Gailey had mentioned, it's very, the focus this year is the APWA accreditation. Also looking at completing the capital projects that are in process without adding too many additional. Streamlining the citywide processes to increase our levels of service with citywide management systems, as he mentioned, GIS, asset management, administrative softwares, and then strategic staffing. Management of citywide surface storm detention ponds. We discussed this a bit today, and I think this is going to be brought back up a few meetings from now of whether or not the city wants to take over all of the surface water ponds or stormwater ponds in the city, and then either build those out or increase rates to maintain those. This will take a bit of planning. So this isn't something that you will likely see in 2022, but the work will need to be done in 2022 if it's decided to implement this in 2023. It's going to take updating the GIS system with all of the inventory of all of the ponds, as well as pricing and cost. So that is something that we discussed a bit today. And then, of course, enhancing the transportation funding, whether that's through TBD or some other mechanism, and then enhancing our park and recreation funding. Again, levy lid lift or a park and rec district or some sort. So that's all I have for today. I just wanted to give you kind of an overlook and kind of get you started thinking about what we're looking at in the mayor's priorities this year. If you have any questions for me, please feel free. I see a couple.
But I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilmember Dickinson.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. You talk about management of citywide surface and stormwater detention ponds. What did you suggest we might do? I wasn't clear on that one.
This is actually something that's being discussed in the Public Works Department. Director Durpo might be able to talk about that a little bit. I know it's planning to come forward in a workshop as a discussion item a few meetings from now of whether or not, and I know we talked about it originally back when we did our rate study of whether or not we wanted to take over the maintenance of them and bill out to HOAs and private owners. And I believe this is an additional discussion of taking over ownership of the ponds, right. In which case we wouldn't bill individually, we would increase the rates citywide to take care of all of the ponds. So I think that's the distinction.
So we will talk about that more deeply with Mr. Durpo. Okay,
yes.
Great. Thank you.
And Mrs. Ferrant.
And Ms. Ferrant, of course.
And Barb, you did a great job explaining that. We will be back on October 26th with a presentation that will just to check in how we're doing on the rate study, what we've completed to date, if we're on target, and then have a private HOA detention pond discussion in length.
Thank you.
Barb, quick question on your projections for property tax. You're projecting a 14% increase for 2022 in valuation?
Yes.
And that is based upon Snohomish County Assessor's information?
Yes.
Or do you know offhand what we saw in 2021?
Overall, I believe it ended up being 7%.
Okay.
I was just looking at the data today. I'm sorry, I keep opening screens and they're going into you guys' screen.
I mean, historically, assessed valuation kind of always lags the market. And so I'm just wondering, appreciate you forecasting 14%, which is obviously higher than what we saw. But I'm just, I don't want to be an optimist, but I mean, the real estate prices that we've seen increase-wise in the last 18 months is just phenomenal. it's not going to go on forever, but I'm just wondering if maybe that 14% increase for 22, which really kind of reflects the 21 market,
Yes.
if that's maybe a little bit on the light side.
It's possible. As I said, I did get this from so I got our preliminary assessed value information from Snohomish County a couple of days ago, and it does push us to $6 billion in assessed value. And then our prior year, sorry, give me 1 minute to open another one. Our preliminary that we received a number of months ago went from 5.298 in tax year 2021, so 2020, to 5.88 in 2022. That was preliminary. Now they've sent us a more robust preliminary. So as they keep updating data, they send that to us. And that was an 11% increase, I believe. And now we're at, as I said, the 6.07, which is about a 14%.
So, okay. So they are recognizing that things are obviously changing and new numbers are coming through the door. Okay.
Yes. And we always end up receiving the final information just before we bring the packet to council in November with the final numbers, which is again why when we do our certification, we certify high because they don't have their final numbers generally by the time we certify.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes.
So Barb, could you go back to the slide that talks about the utility fees?
Sure. This one?
Okay, so far we don't have a stormwater rate or a sewer rate. Okay.
Correct. Correct. And I show the water and garbage on here as those are two that we do have, but there is no limit on those. So we could propose higher percentages if we chose to.
Actually, I was just getting ready for the stormwater discussion we're going to have on the 26th.
Gotcha.
I'm not proposing raising any fees right now. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? If you think of anything, let me know.
All right, Barb. Appreciate your presentation. Very well done. Make sure we all reread it and then digest a little bit more so we can have further discussion on the budget.
Do we have that sent out to us in our package? We don't have that. Your slide
Yes.
deck.
I will send it to Kelly right now and have her send it out to you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Before we adjourn, are there any alibis out there? All right, I'm seeing east-west on the head. So with that, let's get a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sounds unanimous. Go out and do great things and help the community.